Hey friends, I'm Greg Nettle, and I have the privilege of serving as president of Stadia Church Planting, where our vision is for every child on the planet to have a church. We do that by helping you start thriving, growing, multiplying churches for the next generation. Welcome to the Church Planting Podcast. On this episode, we have my very good friend and colleague, Mr. Steve Porter. Steve Porter is not only my close friend, but he's also the board chair of Stadia. Imagine those two things going together. Steve and I are going to be discussing today what makes a good board member. How does a good board function? Steve has lots of background in church board experience, finance committees, serves on multiple business boards as well as nonprofit boards. This is a fascinating conversation that every leader needs to listen to, and every potential board member and board member should listen to kind of enhance your board skills. So excited for this episode of the Church Planting Podcast. Well, I'm here with my very good friend, actually dear friend, travel companion, golf buddy, and who happens to be the chair of the Stadia board, colleague as well, Mr. Steve Porter. Steve, welcome to the Church Planting Podcast.
Thanks, Greg. I'm honored to be here.
I mean, we've had a long journey together. I was thinking about it this morning, Steve. So you're chair of the board of Stadia right now, and have been for the past 7 years, actually finishing up 7 years. But prior to that, you also served on teams with me at River Tree, where I was senior pastor, and you and Pam and your family we all grew up together, and finance team and all kinds of, you talk about your board experience just a little bit, and where have you served on different types of boards like this?
Been on a couple corporate boards, and those are obviously very, very different than the nonprofit and church boards. It's a great experience. I think the one thing that I've learned over the course of the years, especially when I get onto committees and boards where I'm dealing with pastors, is that most pastors are trained theologically, but they always seem to miss in seminary and stuff, teaching financial stuff to pastors. And it's the one area that that's kind of my strength. And so it's been fun to serve on various nonprofits and be that guy.
Well, hey, let's talk about that a little bit, because it's one of the things I've appreciated about you so much is, first of all, you've been firm with saying, hey, you have to understand this stuff. But you've also been gracious in saying, I'm willing to come alongside you and help you understand this stuff. But you actually, and the board at Stadia, I remember this, none of us, I haven't had a math class since, high school. I went to seminary, I get a graduate degree, I'm leading, and then all of a sudden I'm leading multi-million-dollar organizations and don't know how to read a spreadsheet, right? And which you went to college, right? That's your financial background.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Accounting degree. So, and finance minor. So,
and as well as you lead a multi-million-dollar organization and deal with that every day.
Yes, absolutely. And it's funny because I see that in most people in the non-for-profit world. And I remember coming years ago to meet with a group of young guys you were mentoring, and we sat around afterwards, and they started asking a bunch of questions, and most of their things were about reaching high capacity donors, and I just don't understand this. And I remember telling them at the time, get educated in it. Just go take some classes, which I know you did. And
well, that's what I was going to. I mean, the board required me. I went to Cornell University and got a certificate in corporate finance. And Steve, it was one of the best things that I ever did, because I'm actually pretty competent now at reading sheets, and I understand most of the vocabulary and, the forecasting and budgeting and, P&Rs and P&Ls and all kinds of stuff that's going on. But that was because of your encouragement. So what would you say to those? So we've got lots of church planters listening, lots of existing church leaders who are going to say, what I said, well, I've got good people around me. What would you say to them?
People that end up getting taken generally say they've got good people around them. So if you've got somebody in your organization It's like access to money, and you never know what situation's going to put people into that predicament where they're going to do something wrong. And it happens to the churched and the unchurched, the saved and the unsaved. It's going to happen. And the best way to prevent that as the leader of an organization is to have a much better understanding of it, because you put controls in place to make sure that who's able to sign checks, who's able to move money. It's just a great thing to do.
Okay. So, I mean, I guess that's kind of our first point here is get some financial education. If you're going to serve as a board member alongside of, I've had great people around me. I can say that, Steve, my whole ministry life, right? But the reality is it's been really a lot more beneficial for me to be able to also sit and understand what you all are talking about and be able to present. And we have our CFO who comes with us to the board meetings as well.
Yeah.
Is that something?
And that's important because he's got even the better understanding than you as the leader of the organization, because he lives and breathes it every day. And I think that, when you start talking about the financials and the financial success of an organization, the best thing a person in your position can do is admit that you don't completely understand it and you don't have the information. Don't try to fake it. So, I mean, because everybody will figure it out real quickly. And
Yeah.
if we can figure it out in a 2-hour board meeting or a day-long board meeting, imagine what the people that see you every day are thinking. Why do I bother? This guy is clueless.
Ah,
I mean, really.
that's why I love you. Hey, let's shift gears. Let's talk about another point. Let's talk about policy governance, because, the boards we operate, Stadia operates by policy governance. There's upsides, there's some downsides. Talk about policy governance a bit.
Policy governance is great, and it's the worst thing I've ever seen at the same time. And here's why. Policy governance is nice because if you end up with a board member that likes to dig and get in the weeds, and why is this cell phone bill so high, or why is this, or why is that, and it's within budget, it's not really a significant thing, that just wastes everybody's time. The one thing that I've experienced sometimes, and not with you, because I told you up front, I won't let you go there, but another organization I was on, they hid behind it. Oh, I don't have to explain that. It's policy governance. Oh, you can't ask that because of policy governance. Well, you know what? If you really want me as a board member, don't hide. Be upfront, honest, and be transparent. Not honest is a bad word. Transparent, because I'm there because you wanted me as a board member for a certain skill set. And if you want to hide behind policy governance, it's a bad thing. But that's the only instance where it's really bad. The rest of it is, it's for the protection of the rest of the board members, and it's there for the protection of the people on staff, because you don't get somebody getting way down in the weeds and stuff when there really is no reason to be there. If there's a problem, I get it, but that's where transparency comes in.
I agree with you. I mean, I think policy governance is necessary, right? Because it gives me the boundaries of the playing field in which I know I can lead. And if I need to get outside those boundaries, I need to let you as a board member know, and the board know, that I'm outside those boundaries. Here's why, and here's when we need to get back in if I have the permission of the board. Now, a lot of leaders think that's restrictive, but the reality is it's very freeing, because as long as I'm in that football field, in those boundaries, I have total freedom, for the most part,
Sure.
to play. The problem comes, as you just said, when maybe there's stuff that the board really does want to know. They want to take a deeper dive, or maybe they've heard something. Maybe there's some staff problems, right? And Steve, we've had that, I mean, I'm just to be real transparent at Stadia. We've had, some times where the board has had to listen to some staff to find out some things that are going on, right?
Right. Absolutely. And the board's opportunity to dig and get in the weeds and find stuff out is really once a year when you make your budget, because our responsibility at that point to say, okay, here's why we approve this budget. Here's why we don't approve this budget. Why do you need this? Why do you need that? What's this going to? But once we approve that, policy governance is great because it gives you the opportunity to live within the guidelines of which we set. as a board. And it's the perfect, people then want to second guess themselves. And that's where policy governance steps in, because they want to say, well, wait a minute, I don't remember approving that. Why are you doing that? And you can just say, hey, honestly, I'm happy to answer your question, but just so you know, I'm living within the guidelines you set me in our policy governance. One of the big things about policy governance is I like the way that we did it at Stadia. We have that 900-page policy governance manual that I don't know that anybody's really looked at much since then, but we have our board policy manual, which is a floating document that can be changed much easier than the policy governance of the organization. And that's really covers everything we need to know and do to be a good board member and to support you and what you need to do to know what you have to do for us as board members.
Yeah, so it's about a 30-page document, the policy governance document. Now I say that because that was the year one, we sat down and as a team wrote that together.
Right.
And then board policy manual is just a few pages and that are the up-to-date, here are the things. But boy, so there are things in there like, how am I treating the staff appropriately? Are people being paid appropriately? Is there, equity between, ethnic groups, between gender groups and so forth? And are we taking care of people's data, our donors' data correctly? All of those things. And it sounds mundane, but gosh, Steve, it protects the board and the organization.
Correct. And you obviously see how much I really don't like it, because I thought it was 900 pages in 30, not 30 in 3. So,
okay, let me shift gears again. So 3 things when we bring in new board members on, and our board meeting's coming up next week, and we have a new board member that's coming in to kind of check things out, and we'll be checking them out. But I tell them up front, here's, 3 things that are expected of the board. One is that one of their jobs is to encourage me as the leader, because you're who I report to. The second thing is to give me wise counsel. And I think how much I appreciate that, Stephen, from our board. And then the third thing is accountability, where, hey, if I'm, am I living according to the policy governance? Are we making budget? Am I treating staff? All those 3 things. Let's talk about, because you've been so good at it, the encouragement piece. What would you just say to board members who have a high capacity leader, or they're leading a new church planter? How should they care for them, Steve?
So my son-in-law has a saying called hot peanut butter, and it's HOTPB. Hang out together. No, gosh, now I got to remember. That's terrible. Hang out together. Be present and eat together. It's an acronym. I think
We like it.
I think the one thing that a good board member can do is make sure that they're present to do that, because, I think the chemistry between you and I work really well because we do stuff together. We've traveled on vacations together. We cook together. We have
Eat
dinners together. But at the same time, I don't care what you want. I'm going to tell you my feelings about how it is. I will never be a yes man. And the one thing a leader of an organization cannot have is yes people on their board, because if you handpick some board members to be on your board, and all they're going to do is say yes to you because they really aren't reading the information or they aren't doing stuff right, that is a terrible thing for you, for the organization. It just shouldn't happen. You need us there for that accountability. And you've got people on your board, you're putting people on your board for their range of expertise. Somebody in legal, somebody that's financial, somebody that's a pastor that understands the church planting better, and the different people. And that's in every nonprofit. You really need to space out who you have on your board.
Okay, so we actually talked about that, Stephen. So a lot of times people, when they put people on their boards, their eldership, whatever their management team looks like, what's the strategy? Talk about that. Like, what are some things we've looked for? You mentioned legal, for instance. Talk about the makeup of a good board.
So, I like I like to, in most organizations, and Stadia is a little bit different because we're completely virtual. We're not building or
Yeah.
technically building anything. We're planning churches. And like when we were planning a lot in South America, someone was building a building or something. But because of that, like I think there's somebody that has a good mechanical, structural, building kind of background. Because if you're putting somebody together that's planning a church, they need to be guiding you guys when a church planner says, "Hey, I got this great offer on a
Yep.
building." You know, um, you definitely want one or two people that have financial experience, be it finance, be it accounting, but definitely something in that financial piece. You definitely let's see, you got the finance, you got the accounting, you got the construction. You always want a legal. I mentioned the legal, and that's because we talk about a lot of stuff in our board meeting.
We do all the HR stuff today. There's all
Correct.
yeah.
And in today's world, I mean, there is a pothole or a landmine waiting around every corner that you can't keep up with the latest and greatest thing that somebody's going to yell about, which is okay. I mean, we care about everybody. Okay. So you got to get that, but it's really difficult. And having somebody legal to sit in there and talk through something with you or a statement we want to make, it's really important.
Okay, so the big takeaway here for me is just that, hey, think strategically through your board. Now I'm working under the assumption here for us, there's a very high level of spiritual maturity on the Stadia board. Every single person. For me, that's the very first. I think for us, it's the first given, right?
Yeah.
Because you're dealing with God's kingdom stuff, people's resources, church planting. I mean, serious spiritual stakes here. So that's a given. But then what I would encourage everyone, all of our listeners, is think strategically. If you need a person who knows a lot about children's ministry, make sure you have that on the board. If whatever, because I know you serve on another board, Steve, that's very child focused, and you have to have people who have that expertise on that board.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that um, when you go to get board members, it's important for the organization's mission and goal to be at the center of what the person that's coming on the board is about. You remember when you first asked me to give to Stadia and brief stuff, and
Yep.
I'm like, no, honestly, Greg, I don't care about it.
Yep.
I understand we need church planning. I know it's out there, but it wasn't a passion of mine. And you said you realize though 7 billion children, that need
Yeah.
church homes. And I'm like, oh, you said, come on a trip and let's see what a church will do. And I was all in. And I was
Yeah.
all in because I was behind what Stadia did because it was after what was at the core of me and my wife, which was children.
Every child has a church.
Yep.
So you want people on the board that are passionate about they're on mission with you. Okay, let's talk about, so there's the encouragement piece. And Steve, I don't want to lose this because you've sat down with me after board meetings and you've been the one who sat down with me about salary or a car allowance or something. And I remember the last time you sat down and literally you had tears in your eyes and the board was blessing me in some way or other. And, those things mean the world to a leader. And the board will say hard things to me, but they are so encouraging as well. And that's just been so important over the years. Just to thank you for that.
Yeah. Well, you're welcome. I mean, that comes from uh, the relationship and the loyalty that you have to your board members, that your board members have to you. And we care about you. We care about what's going on in your life when something's happening with your family, with you.
Okay.
We genuinely care about it. When we feel like you're getting stressed, and I'm a little closer to you because we're good friends. We were good friends long before Stadia. And so I see you and I can tell when something's not right.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And so that prompts us to act to say, hey, you know what? No, it's time for you to walk away and take a sabbatical and a break. And that's important as board members. Here's why that's important. someone in a leadership position is leading people improperly, financially improper, uh, any range of things, they can hide it for a week when they go on vacation. When they go away for 4 weeks, things will start to come to the surface. And be it that employees come forward and say something or something, because normally you have no contact with that. But
Yes.
in that contact, things can come out. And that's really important to do with maybe anybody that has any kind of real control over people. You want to make sure that they're gone for a period of time to take a sabbatical and or financial control. But the most important part of that is to rest and recharge. And that's what's the most important, because you can see when someone's not operating with their A game because there's other stresses and problems in their life.
Yeah, Steve, I wanted just to encourage our listeners and any board members. I hope that some of our listeners will take this podcast and have their board listen to it, because this was recent. This was just, I think, 2 years ago. I was sitting down at our fall meeting, and we meet twice a year in person as a board. And I was going over my goals for the coming year. And I had this whole list of things, right? And I'll never forget, we got all three of them. We discussed them and stuff. And you actually said, Greg, the reality is we have faith in you as a leader that you're going to lead the organization to hit these goals, or you're going to come back to us and tell us why you didn't hit them and what the circumstances were. What I really want to know, you actually said this to me, is I want to see what are the goals for your personal spiritual life and your family life. And do you know that revolutionized, Steve, um, my what I report to the board? And I have this one-page doc now that I show to the board every time. And just recently, some other organizations now have taken that and they're using it with their senior leaders. And just to say, hey, thank you for pushing on that and saying that matters to us as a board.
Yeah. And I think that, again, we realize that for you to be at the top of your game and do the things that need to be done for the organization, which we all care deeply about. You guys wouldn't be working there at the wages that you are, or we wouldn't be serving there as a board if we weren't passionate about it. I mean, honestly.
Well, you're so highly paid, though.
Yeah, we're very highly paid. Yeah, if you're doing this to make money, this is not the revenue as a board. But it costs you money, because that's where your service goes and your heart goes, so should your treasures. And so it's a responsibility we have. But I think that I'm trying to think where we were at right before I started stammering so much. What was your question?
Oh, just talking about how important it is for the board to say those goals, the organizational goals, so does your family and your personal life.
Right. So it's really important, because it led you to think, you know what? I think I'm going to go meet with this person who's a life coach to help me set the stage and the goal for my 20 years.
Yep.
Be it family, be it work, be it retirement, whatever the case may be. And that person helped you immensely become up with, do life goals and the things that, you've got a plan, you and Julie together have a plan going forward.
And that's something that's kind of unique. I wish, again, I would encourage all of our church planners, church leaders, organizational leaders that are listening to this. So the board, for me, it's the organizational stuff, but they're seeing all of, like, you guys know, like, one of my metrics is, am I preparing for retirement? Because I don't want to get to a point where it's time for me to step down as leader of Stadia and the board go, oh my gosh, the dude's going to have to eat cat food for the rest of his life. Right.
Or cat lovers, don't call it.
Yeah, don't know. And in that stuff. So there's lots of metrics in there. Are Julie and I being generous with the income and resources God's given us? Those metrics are all in there. And so it is an absolute joy for me to have a board that cares enough about me and that I trust enough to share those intimate details of our life journey. Steve, let me come back. So as we kind of wrap up our time together, and this has gone so quickly, So for those out there who are serving on boards or thinking about serving on boards, talk about what brings you the deepest joy. Why are you doing it?
Um, Gosh, why am I doing it? Um, Couple reasons. Again, I think I touched on it a little bit, is that at the heart of who I am and what I care about, it part of the main mission of the organization. And that means a lot to me. When we say every child has a church, we mean we want every child to have a church. And it doesn't matter if you're in Russia, Egypt, Africa, India, the United States, all the children are the same. We want all the children to have a church. And that's a goal, and that's a mission. The other reason is because I care about you. Honestly, because I do. And when you first asked me, I wasn't sure if I really wanted to do it because we were too close. And we talked about it. I wonder, could I tell you the hard things in that context? Sometimes in front of the whole board, which we had to do, and other times in private. And because I felt like our relationship was strong enough to get through that, it made me want to do this.
Friends, Steve Porter, I wish you all had Steve Porter on your board, but no, you cannot have him. Thanks for being on the Church Planting Podcast.
You're welcome. Thank you, Greg.
Thanks for listening to the Church Planting Podcast, part of the Stadia Podcast Network. To find more great episodes and to see how Stadia can help you start thriving, growing, multiplying churches for the next generation, be sure to check out stadia.org/podcasts.